What you know, alibis? Welcome to a big live episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. We got Angenette, Levy, and Big E in the house. We're going to bring it to you. What you know, guys?
Well, hey, all.
Hey Gigi, how are you?
I'm good, Angenette. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Let me tell you something, Big E. It's good to
Yeah.
have you on here.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. It'll be fun. We'll have a
Yes,
good
it
time.
will. So, we've got a bunch of questions that you guys have sent in. So, all right, Angenette, overall observations, body language for Jake. Did he look around Did he look around in the crowd? Did he look at George a lot? What was your take on him?
It was interesting when he came in, we've been watching him walk into court for years now. And he came in with his new glasses on. That was a new addition. And I felt like he sat down and he started to look around and he looked directly at George. And I was sitting right behind George. And I think that their eyes may have met for just a second. But George, to me, seemed like he had no interest in looking at his brother or his mother. Where Jake, I think, was looking for something. He was looking for, I don't know. Did you get that feeling, Eric, that Jake, when he looked at him, he was looking for acknowledgement of sorts?
Jake was looking for, he was trying to say, I'm sorry, but also looking for a blessing. If that makes any sense at all, because between the two, at least from what I witnessed, Angela, she made very little contact over toward George's table.
Right.
Very little very little.
I found stunning.
Yeah, that really did kind of make me scratch my head because it's your son, and
Right.
probably the
Firstborn.
last time, yeah, you're and the last time you're ever going to see him, and she actually spun her chair to the right, away from him, even.
Yeah.
To where
Wow.
she almost like she didn't even want to see him out of her peripheral.
It was like she knew where he was going to be, which was weird.
Yeah.
Because how would she have known, unless she had seen it on the news, the configuration or something, before the judge said she couldn't, watch the news anymore. But I thought it was weird how she came in and it was the way she sat down. She sat down with her little handcuffs on, and it was like she knew where to look, straight ahead at Canepa,
Right.
instead of acknowledging the defense table. And I
Yeah.
think I only saw her kind of go like this once to kind of scan the room, and it didn't look like her eyes met George's.
Which is weird because if you think about how close knit they were from the day these boys were born and how intertwined everything was, and then she can't even look at him, which is probably shame. She's not the nicest person ever, but I'm sure the dynamic is so weird now. They haven't seen each other in almost 4 years.
Right.
They've got their own lives for 4 years away from each other, which they've never had.
Right.
Right.
They're totally separated, which is, they're probably, how do they function without one another? Because even it sounds like they fought a lot from everything we've heard. But maybe that's just the way they existed. I don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it sounded like they got along. Sometimes it sounded like George and Angela, at least on the wiretaps, were getting along better than Jake and Angela, even though it seemed like Jake was probably somehow the favored child, despite the back rubs or back scratches at night and stuff like that. I don't know.
Oh man, that was one of those moments in the trial where I was like, what did she just say? I mean, it's been weird. There have been weird things. That was maybe the weirdest thing yet. She had to leave the room while he got his back scratched and told Angela about his day. So
we didn't hear that from Jake, right? Beth.
No.
Yeah.
That might have been off the table with Jake.
Yeah.
Another thing about Jake and Gigi is Jake Jake was very comfortable in that chair.
Yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
sure.
he, when he sat down, he glanced all over the place. And when they'd go have a sidebar or something, you'd see him lean up and look up at the TV screen up above his head, and he'd look, just all around, you know, just like he was comfortable. And
Yeah.
he was ice cold, man. He was ice cold. I mean,
He likes to talk, though.
oh yeah, yeah.
Well, those of us peasants out here in regular land, we only got to hear the little leaked audio clip of Jake, which was describing the murders, which, I mean, it was what, 8 minutes or so, but it was cold. But now, Angenette, you tweeted out, and I believe I saw somebody else that you heard from a few sources inside at one point. He looked at the Roden and the Gilly family and said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, I didn't actually witness that, but other people were talking about it, news people in the courtroom. And Eric, I don't know if you heard it or saw it. I'm sorry if you saw it, Eric, but other people confirmed to me that he looked at the Rodens and mouthed, "I'm sorry," during a
I
sidebar.
didn't see it, but like you, I mean, I heard people saying it, but I personally didn't witness it.
It's just so bizarre. I mean, you have to wonder, what does he feel? Does he feel remorse? I don't know if he's capable of it, but it's I think out of all of them, it seems to me that George, because I did see somebody tweet out that when Angela was finished testifying, that George kind of bit his lower lip and wiped his eye. And maybe knowing that that was the last time he would ever see his mother, who knows? But it is just, it's a very bizarre dynamic all the way around. It's now I'm just interested for Billy because, I think he's going to take it all the way. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's going to trial.
Mhm.
I really do. I saw one of his lawyers at the courthouse when Angela was testifying one day. So I don't think they would be there if they were planning on, having him plead out. And I said this many times. Billy has no leverage. I
Right.
mean, the state doesn't need him, and the state doesn't need George. They,
Great point.
neither one of them have a play. I mean, George's play. Okay, and I'm saying, let's say George is guilty because he's innocent until proven guilty. George's play was after Jake,
Yeah.
pleaded guilty. That was the signal. Jump on board, because if he truly didn't shoot anybody, even if he was still there, he was complicit. He's guilty under the law if the state has proven so. Your play was when your brother threw you under the bus. That's when you
Right.
should have raised your hand.
Right.
Mhm. And I think that's where a lot of the listeners sort of forget is it doesn't mean he had to pull the trigger. He's part of the conspiracy and he's charged with conspiracy. And exactly what Jake and Angela did was put him in the middle of that conspiracy.
Right.
Yeah.
You
and
know,
he's going, and during jury selection, which wasn't broadcast, Angie Canepa explained to the jurors when she was questioning them, that the judge will give you a complicity instruction. That basically, she gave the example of, say you're robbing a bank and you drive the getaway car, or say somebody breaks into a house and you say, "Hey, don't you kill anybody in there," or "I'm not going down for murder," but you lifted somebody's foot up to help them climb into a window. Guess what? You're still guilty.
You're
right.
complicit. Yep.
Yeah. Now, what do you guys, at what point do you think so far the jury's been the most engaged?
Probably with Jake and Angela.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too,
Jake,
obviously. But
Jake and Angela, and then after those two, in my opinion, has been the cell phone stuff from Eva Slage.
mhm.
She has been so phenomenal.
Yeah, I like her.
She
She's
is.
her and Epic Beard Dude, Mr. White from BCI, they're my favorites.
Yeah, I like that beard alone, he should
Yes.
get his own gun show or armor
I
show.
said that on my Facebook. I said he needs his own show explaining guns and stuff. And I like Julia. I mean, I think she's done a good job. Parker seems to pick on her out of everybody on cross exam when really it's so cut and dry what she does.
Right. It's like, dude, don't stand so close to her.
Oh, yeah.
You get all woman, like 9 women on this jury, and you're up in Julia Evislage's grill. I don't know why he thinks that's a good idea.
I would have put my hand out and said, here's our
Personal
limit.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was smelling what he had for lunch a few times.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's one thing me and Big E were wondering, because there's been a lot of things that have been open-ended that were never resolved. I'm wondering why Angela Canepa didn't ask Jake about those surveillance videos of the cars coming and going.
That was weird.
Yeah, that was a big one.
They can't be identified, but
Yeah.
I thought it was weird that you bring them up, but then you never these establish some sort of timeline,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you don't bring them up with Jake.
Right. Yeah.
You put them in front of the jury in week 3, and then don't bring them up when the actual witness who can say, yes, that's us in those 2 vehicles going back or coming back or whatever. But she didn't. So that's one of those things that I guess we'll never know.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing somebody just asked, I took it off the screen. We know that Jake has not seen Sophia since the day of his arrest. That's right. Isn't that correct? As far as we know.
Yes.
I mean, that was his testimony. There were rumors on some Facebook group that he had a virtual visit with her. I just cannot even imagine that. I mean, can you imagine the trauma of that? Like, that just is not a good idea. I don't think it would happen.
I'm sorry, Gigi, go ahead.
No. First of all, I don't know how to get this bouncing dinosaur off the top corner of my screen. Don't know where he came from, but he's part of the stream. The 4th of July parties too. Everybody who knew the Wagners or the Rodens or the Hannah Gilley were asked, did you go to these 4th of July parties? And I think it's probably just to say they all intermingled a little more than what the defense was trying to say. But, that was another thing too, though. Why were we asked about these 4th of July parties nonstop?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too. I was like, is there something going on with the 4th of July parties? Like,
yeah, I was waiting for some shoe to drop.
Yeah, I kept waiting for some kind of bomb to come out, from it, but never did. I mean, yeah, they have been to his 4th of July parties at least once. But I guess they did. Somebody, I think it was Parker, or one of them asked if Chris was a certified fireworks vendor or something. I forget now, but I remember somebody asking that. But yeah, I don't know what the deal was with the 4th of July party.
Apparently he was a licensed fireworks person. So I guess that means he can set off the good stuff. I don't know.
Miss Chewy, I don't have mods and I don't know how to assign them, but I need them. The other thing too that kind of caught me off guard was the discrepancy of him looking under Dana's door before he shot her.
Yeah, that's a biggie. That's huge in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's huge too. And I don't understand because he said, I mean, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. Jake said he was standing at a pivot point in the hall where he could both see into Dana's room and Hannah. So like, if you look at the diagram, it's like Dana's door would have been over here and Hannah's would have been down here. And he's like, it's like he's standing in one spot and can see into both bedrooms.
Yeah.
But then on cross, I think it was on cross, and he describes like how he was frozen because he saw Dana on her phone and saw the light from the phone illuminating her face. And then so then the sound of Kylie crying jolts him out of his frozen state. and Dana sees him and he takes a step and he shoots her like twice. And then he goes to Hannah Mae's and shoots her. She sees him and he shoots her. And then he goes back to Dana's and shoots her because she's making noise. But then on Cross, you're talking about how you had to look underneath the door to see, and that you could see her feet, I think is what he said. And then he could see the light. But then he said also that the lights were on as bright as in the courtroom.
Right.
And I was like, how are you seeing through a door? Like it was so confusing. And I'm like, that to me is one of those details where that doesn't jibe. So that was never cleared up on redirect for me.
Right.
As to how you're looking under a door and seeing, because the way he first described it on direct was that it's like he saunters in there, walks in there, and he sees Dana. There was no talk about having to get on the floor and look under a door.
Not at all. There was, like you said, he described it as like a pivot point, and he could see the light. He could see Hannah was asleep. He's seen Dana, and he froze because he seen the phone on her face. Like you just said, I'm just echoing you. Really, I should stop, but
no. But I mean, this is good because I'm not crazy. Like I heard what I heard. I wrote it all down just like you did.
Yeah, you absolutely did. And the baby cries and snaps him out of it, and he described it as kind of like he took like a hop step into Dana's room and
It wasn't
shoved.
far.
Yeah, I mean, to hear him describe it, he can see into both bedrooms.
Right.
So he hopped into Dana's and he shot her. And now this part I'm just going to add in because of what the medical examiner said. Dana it was a little bit worse than a graze wound going right up her forehead. It was under the skin, but the ME said that she would have had a really bad, oh my goodness, what does the football players get?
Concussion.
Yeah,
She said it wasn't fatal. The coroner said it wasn't fatal.
Right. She had one shot that was going up. That was, it was under the skin, but on top of the skull, and it would have been like she would have been having a really, really bad concussion. So then he pivots back around, shoots Hannah. Dana's moaning because guess what? You didn't kill her quickly like you want, and fast like you testified you wanted it to be. Then you went back into Dana, and then you finished her off. And then you went back into Hannah and you finished her off. But I don't know why when Canepa got redirect, I don't understand why she didn't bring that up and have him explain that looking under the door deal.
Yeah, it was so open. I mean, she just left it.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there, but it's not resolved. And that's that's the one thing is something like that where it makes no sense. I mean, at what point does he open the door to shoot her?
Right.
Yeah, because he says that Dana gasped. She's seen Jake. She absolutely seen him. Now I know she didn't see him under that door.
Right.
Yeah, no.
So she gasped according to him. And Hannah gasped also by the time he got back over to shoot her.
Yep.
So he scared the bejesus out of both of them.
Oh, yeah.
And, do you believe Jake and what he told Canepa? or do you believe what he told Parker? And that's what stinks is, at this point, we shouldn't, this stuff, we shouldn't even be talking about that.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing, I think it's kind of obvious, no, but do you guys think George will take the stand in his own defense?
I mean, I just don't. I mean, maybe if it's a Hail Mary, I don't know. I don't know how the defense thinks this is going. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's going on in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if it's. I mean, if they've got these wiretaps that, I mean, some of them, I think you can argue the wiretaps. It's like, well, you're not talking like somebody who's not involved in something. You're not like, Mom, I can't believe they won't leave us alone.
Right.
You're like, these mother frickers or fritters, whatever you say.
Yeah.
What's he gonna do, Eric? What's he gonna bring?
He's gonna bring all hell with him, baby.
All hell, yeah. That's just on Tabby though.
Right.
But you got to cut the head off the snake.
Right. Yeah.
And
then you got Angel in the background. Bovine. Stop that.
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's crazy. So Angenette, you know this. Okay, so we know this. Deering is retiring, Judge Deering. But he will be back for Billy's trial because he's a visiting judge, or do we know that?
So I thought I had heard that when I was out there that he was going to do Billy's trial too. I mean, think about it. Like handing this off, I'm sure a judge could get up to speed on it, a visiting judge or something. But I had heard when I was out there one day that he was going to keep the case because you can, in the state of Ohio, you can't be on the ballot past age 70 when he's over 70. So Rob Junk is going to become the judge in Pike County. Rob Junk's currently the county prosecutor. So he can't preside over this case because he's got a conflict. So I had heard that Deering was going to keep the case because you can be appointed as a visiting judge. There are people older than age 70 who still work as visiting judges. But I need to look into that a little further because that was my understanding of what was going to happen. Because if you think about it, Deering, he hasn't even been doing his own docket. I don't know who's handling his docket. I think it's a good question worth asking, but I'm assuming they've got some visiting judge handling his docket right now because there are not any other cases going on in his courtroom right now.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So does anybody think that Grandma Frederica will be charged?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like Angela's put her like in the middle of this a little bit.
Yeah.
She's kind of rolled Frederica under the bus a little bit, even though she wrote the letter apologizing to her for bringing shame on the family. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they can get her on that bulletproof vest thing that they did before.
But it wasn't even really relevant to the trial. I mean, none of that came in. So
no, it's not relevant.
When they put the pictures of the vest up on there, Parker objected. They did a sidebar, came back, wasn't talked about anymore. So that
it's like, which is funny to me because I would almost, if I were Parker, I'd be like, get Scheider on the stand and I'd ask. So when was the plate of that vest purchased? Let's go into this whole thing, I guess not though. Like, cause then they could say like, after the murders and they'd be like, oh, okay, thank you. No further questions. But I guess that's maybe too much of a movie moment to this trial.
Now, George hasn't had anybody there sitting and like in support of him, has he?
No.
Nobody.
No.
Wow.
Sad, actually.
I've seen a lot of people sympathizing with George the last week or so after the wiretaps, especially, just to see the dynamic. And I think some people thought that, it maybe put him in a little bit of a better light, even though some of the wiretaps, he sounds like my grandma yelling. But I've seen some people who have some sympathy for George. I've said it on every episode just about with this case. Juries scare me. Like Casey Anthony scarred me. You know what I mean? Juries are unpredictable. You just never know.
Yeah, Casey Anthony, that's so funny you bring that up because I was working the early morning shift in local news when that trial was. I have a 7-year-old who's demanding.
That's okay. I
food.
have 3 back that way. So.
Honey, just give me a minute, okay? So basically, and he shouldn't be demanding food because guess what? He didn't even want to finish his dinner earlier. But anyway, so Casey Anthony, she's coming out and talking now in that Peacock thing, which I'm just like, you think this is a good idea? Why?
Yes,
but I
it's
raced
not.
to him every day from work to watch that trial when it was on. Like I would get off work at 12:30 and I would try my best to get home immediately to watch what
Yeah.
I had missed. But yeah, I mean, George, on these wiretaps, part of me is like, I think he's just kind of a blowhard. Like, but then it's like, does he look at himself as like the man of the house? Like, because Billy's never there. I don't know. Like your brother's saying you didn't shoot anybody. You froze, I guess. And I'm not saying anything about his character with that, but I just, on some of these wiretaps, it's like he's trying to run the show. And those, I'm talking about the ones I could actually hear,
Yeah.
because the truck ones were terrible. But I don't know if you guys got that impression. I'm like, is he just a blowhard and a bossy guy? Or is he really just trying to run the show in this family? Because it seems like he's like berates Jake a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that comes because of Angela being in his ear. You can hear Jake literally telling her she needs to go take her meds, even though it's for fibromyalgia. But yeah, he's telling her to, you have no proof of any of this. And then we hear a wiretap a little bit later where George is just, I mean, he's meatloaf for about 45 solid minutes in Jake's ear. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I turned it off.
Yeah, it was hard to
I
hear.
was a nervous wreck and hit the noise. I was just like, I can't do it anymore. So
Yeah. It was, and here I am like trying to get it for the episodes. And so I spent part of the day with AirPods shoved down in my ear at full volume, right? So when my ears couldn't, like the inside of my ears couldn't take me doing this and like then stopping and typing, I switched to my Beats and then I would smash my Beats to my ear. And then, then like the outside of my ears, it was so bad. But, the hormone thing killed me. She said, "What hormones?"
Yeah. I mean, she's just.
It's not time for those, Jake.
Somebody said it, and I just seen it in the chat that, with all of these wiretaps and these, listening devices that we've listened to, the one that seems to have the most sense is Jake.
Yeah.
And he really is struggling with that whole family. And yet he's the one who ends up, killing 5 of them. So, but I mean, it's kind of a weird emotional thing there because you're like, well, daggone, man, this kid sounds like he's got some sense, and he's checking Angela and he's checking George. No, you're wrong. My wife's not a whore, and you're not going to disrespect her like that. And to me, as a man, I give kudos to a guy who'll stand up for his wife, regardless if he is or not. But it's been very odd to me in listening to what we've got to listen to that Jake has the most sense out of everyone. And you can hear him even, when he gets disgusted, he just says, "I love you, Mom."
Yeah.
"I love you, Mom." Or "I love you, George." Or, and that's when, Jake has had enough because he doesn't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah. And I found it interesting that he took up for her the way he did and going against his mom, because everything we've heard up till now is just controlling. You never thought of him as the type who would defend his woman against Angela. And then
Right.
you hear it really hard. And it's kind of one of those things, is it knowing the walls are closing in, and does he want to get it right this time in his own way? I don't know. That surprised me about more than anything in this trial, was the way he talked to her.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, when he told her she was delusional, I was
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, Jake!" I was like, "I thought you and
Yeah.
Ange were supposed to be like this."
Mhm.
In
And
some
then when
respects, it's almost like George and Angela are more
Mhm.
the two peas in a pod. It was very strange.
And then when he told her, "You're not her mother," like,
Yes.
there was that silence
Oh
on
my
her end.
goodness. Mic drop.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was deafening. I mean, but it's it's so weird. It reminds me of that movie, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, about that woman that was obsessed with the baby and tried to pass it off as hers. And why, as a grandma, why would you want to have your grandkid call you mommy? She was so upset about that. You said I was her grandmother. Yeah, you are.
Well, because you are, lady. I mean,
Right.
And Eric, tell me if I'm wrong here. We never got an explanation for why Angela. I mean, I don't feel like we ever got that explanation. Like,
no.
why is it so important for you to have your grandchildren refer to you as mom? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
No, it was never, they talked right up to that, but then back away from it, and they don't ask her, neither side, defense or the prosecution, ask her why was you being called mom deadly?
Mhm. But do you guys really honestly think that the entire motive was the fear of sexual assault?
I mean,
Mm.
I guess
I
we'll
don't
never know, but
I don't know. I mean, I think possibly because Angela did talk about that in that one text message. She said something to Billy that Sophia was there and her bottom or something was red.
yeah. Yeah.
So maybe she had this going on in her head, but it doesn't jibe with what, custody because of the other child, because of, I don't know if you mentioned names on this of children on this. But
Yeah.
Bullvine or whatever. I mean, his name's been out there enough.
Yeah,
But
right.
I mean, they obviously wanted custody of him. So I I don't understand that. Like, if you want me to understand this whole dynamic, like, why haven't we asked that question? Why is this so important to you, Angela?
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yep.
Why have you browbeat us for weeks and years on some things that that we had been hearing? Why did you browbeat the public and the jurors into some of this stuff that's just, you didn't go into any more detail to explain it?
Mhm.
So I mean, and I don't want to play pick on Angela. She's doing the best she can, and it's a massive case. I get it. Um, but like I told Gigi earlier, whenever closing come, she better wrap all these things up in a real nice little neat bow
Mhm.
and dumb it down for the jurors, because I can tell you what the jurors wasn't interested in. They wasn't interested in all that technical stuff with um the shoe prints. As critical as that was, she beat it to death.
Mhm.
She beat it to death. And then when you thought it was over with, they bring in this world-renowned expert to talk about it again a couple weeks ago. Why? Why? I
And at
mean,
the end of the day, the last thing you said, can you say with scientific certainty, those were George Wagner's footprints. No.
Yeah.
End of
I
story.
mean,
And all I've heard all these years is that's the big evidence they have against George.
yeah. Is the bloody shoe print?
Yep. And she didn't
And
even ask Jake where George was standing, did she? If he was guarding little Chris's room?
She asked him, but it didn't seem clear to me. Eric,
Okay, yeah.
remember she had him with the, that was when he had like the little metal pointer and he's like this with the try it. You missed
We
that
couldn't
whole,
see. You guys could.
yeah, but Gigi, you guys missed this whole like comedy of the absurd where Jake is trying to use a pointer and then tries to turn and point and then tries to talk, but then the mic won't move, and then he's trying to maneuver both the mic and the pointer. Is the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen.
Oh my
yeah,
god.
I mean they have him in a belly chain, which is
Yeah.
that's just a bit much. I mean, the man's not going anywhere. Just leave him in the cuffs, and like he would pick the microphone up and drop something and flying off the floor, and they put that exhibit back in that corner where the jury is, and he has his back toward everybody on the right side of the room, meaning everybody on the public side, us. So we don't even get to see where he's pointing to as to where George was standing. Now, I was told that when Jake, and here's the other thing, they wouldn't even allow the camera guy to shoot where Jake was pointing because it had his hand in it.
Oh my gosh.
So we don't have a picture anywhere of where Jake Wagner was pointing when he said this is where George was standing at. But going back to my original thing, someone who did see it said that it wasn't where Angela said she stated in her opening statement, that he was standing guard by Chris's door with gun drawn, ready to shoot had Chris Jr. come out of the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe Angenette might know somebody who has a picture where he's pointed, but I do know that they did not allow that picture of him pointing because it had his hand in it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how ludicrous it is.
That's crazy. So the one thing that me and Big E have been back and forth about for weeks now is this timeline.
Oh God.
It is so off. We can't figure it out.
I almost forgot about that. I'm so glad you remembered that.
Well, I think the one thing that we both kind of concluded is it had to be that they stayed at Chris Sr.'s way longer than they said they did.
There's a question that and Eric, I don't know, and Gigi, you would have seen this testimony, I think, too. Do you remember when there was a question asked about how, if you go into the bedroom where Chris and Gary's bodies were dragged and left, there's a big safe on the one side of the wall.
Mhm.
And then there was a safe missing, apparently. There was a smaller safe in the closet.
Right.
And that smaller safe was missing, but we've never heard anything more about it.
Yeah, we don't. They've never said, where it's even at.
Yeah.
Even though they made a point of pointing it out that it was missing.
Yeah. So it's little things like that, though, that the jury's going to be sitting there saying, well, when's this going to come back in?
I figured it was relevant, that was why they asked about it.
Yeah. Somebody said, do you guys think Billy would have actually killed Jake? No. I don't think so.
I don't think so, no.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I don't know how he would have gotten away with that.
Right, yeah, that's a little, as if, 8's not much, but, people, and then here's my opinion about Billy running out and freaking out. I don't think he was freaking out. He shot Chris Sr. I think he was freaking out. Jake opened fire and made it rain bullets whizzing past his head while he's inside.
Oh, you think that's what it was?
Oh yeah, come on, man. He knew what Jake was shooting. He knew one pop and that was lights out for him. Yeah, I was laughing about that. I said he didn't care he shot his friend. He just cared he almost took one himself.
Yeah,
Can you
because
imagine the conversation that really happened at that truck after that? What are you thinking?
well, but what do you think, Angenette, about Jake's timeline with it starting at around 9 o'clock, leaving Peterson?
You know,
And
I think Parker had him when Parker started. This is why it's such a shame that this is not on video. Because I think there are certain things that just don't come through on a transcript, when the transcript will become available. Parker had him going back and forth, and you did this, and then you did what? And then Parker was going fast. There was
yeah,
obviously a method to Parker's madness. And I don't know if that was to throw Jake to catch him off guard a little bit, go fast. And
it was because he even said to Jay, he said, "You drug the bodies to the bedroom, didn't you?"
Mm-hmm.
And Jake said, "No, I did not."
Yeah.
So he was throwing, he was throwing stuff at him. He was rapid firing him questions. Um, you know, and Jake, I thought actually held up pretty good, considering. But he didn't, I was skimming through the notes before we came on, and he says the first go around that he doesn't remember covering, um, or remember why he covered Chris Senior and
Dana
Gary,
or Gary, yeah.
and then he doesn't remember covering Dana
Right.
and the pillow being over her head. So when that all came out, and then it was right along in that same time frame that we got that bombshell that Billy had shot
Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
Frankie multiple more times, right?
Yeah, I would have to look at my notes, but he said because he was trying to look for shell casings and cell phones, but it was too much of a mess, that he had handed the Colt to Billy, and then Billy shot Frankie in the head more times.
Yeah, that shocked me a bit.
That, and I was like, what? How did you leave that out the first time? I mean, he used the same verbiage. He said it was a mess in there. But you didn't even say you tried to look the first time. Like,
well, why is that never, even to this very second, been mentioned by the prosecution?
I don't know. And didn't he say that he told the prosecution that last July?
Yeah.
This past July, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was July of last year, one of the Julys.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that he told them, but then the prosecution never disclosed that to the defense, which I don't know under the rules if that was a mistake, that they didn't fill something out and say, he added this detail or whatever. But I thought that was stunning when he said that, because it just seemed like a big change. Because I think the story, the way we had been told so far, it was like, well, Billy's the Glock guy and George is the SKS guy and Jake's the Colt 1911 guy. Well, according to Jake, Dad, hold my gun or whatever, however that happened. And then and he said Billy was concerned, had questioned him about whether a 22 would get the job done, for lack of a better term, like
right. Yeah, that it would penetrate the skull or something like that. Yeah,
that it wouldn't. So
and
that
he
would
was
make sense why Billy would do that, but I don't know. I just think there was some, and plus, I don't know if you guys picked up on this. I guess there's been this whole big deal made about how Jake doesn't see well at night. So, did you catch onto that, Eric?
Yeah, but
Jake doesn't see well at night, so George would drive at night when they team drove. So, but he's somehow able to commit
Right.
these murders in the
Right.
dark, except in Dana's house where the lights are on.
Right. Yeah. What about the dogs too? That was another open-ended thing that they never had. That she never asked Jake, "How did you get past the dogs?"
at Chris Senior's.
And Frankie, well, we know they were barking at Frankie's, but remember the whole thing was these dogs would have eaten up anybody they didn't
Yeah.
know. But I just thought if I were Canepa, I would have said, "How did you guys get past the dogs at Chris Senior's or wherever?"
Yeah, I mean,
And Frankie's dogs were barking.
Yep, loudly.
Two
And
months.
what freaks me out now is we have this timeline is knowing Frankie and Hannah Hazel's last cell phone activity. They were alive when Chris Sr. and Gary were murdered.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you imagine if he had heard that and came out? I mean, that would have been a game changer.
Yeah, that's what that blew my mind because I was texting Ange back and forth on Twitter that I don't understand how Frankie and Hannah didn't hear 11 gunshot wounds from that 40 Glock. But when you look at the picture from overhead, it looks like the trailers are really close, but she informed me that they're about a half a mile apart. So that would explain why they didn't.
Yeah. And then he did that thing where he went to that little cabin on their property and shot it from so many feet away and they couldn't hear it in the house.
Right.
So you have that too. But it's just weird to think that as Frankie and Hannah Hazel are laying there on the phone with their, their kids, the last picture, the last activity on Frankie's phone was a picture of his boys sleeping. And you think they're wide awake and their dad, he's getting murdered. Gary's getting murdered. It's just, it was brazen. I have to say, out of all the cases I've ever covered, this may be the most brazen trial or case I've ever covered.
Were you
horrifying?
Were you there that day, Ange, when they showed the picture on his phone of him sleeping?
Oh, the children?
On
Frankie. They showed that picture.
On Frankie's phone, the last picture that he took. Was you in the?
I think I was there, and I forget whose testimony that came in through.
That was so sad, man.
Yeah,
I've seen that. It was so sad. I mean,
did that come in through Bobby Joe's testimony?
I think it did. Yeah.
What, that they were awake about the picture?
No, not Bobby Joe. I'm sorry.
That was in the openings. Canepa said that in the openings.
But they talked about Frankie taking the picture of the two boys.
Right. They showed the actual picture later on in the trial, and I can't remember now.
Maybe when she was going through her timeline of, because in her opening she had those graphics. Kenneth's was left off, but she did have that graphic for Frankie, which was last phone activity. And I do remember in the opening she mentioned it was a picture of his boy sleeping. And then Hannah Hazel had texted her sister, I think like close to 1 a.m. It was really late.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to look through some more questions here. Any history of domestic violence that we know of between Billy and Angela? I don't think I've ever heard that.
None that's been reported.
I feel like, I thought somebody said something about, but I can't remember it now. I thought there was maybe that, I don't know if somebody alluded to it or just briefly. I don't know. Yeah. I thought that maybe there had been that had been implied, but I don't know.
And Angela, she kind of leaned into it a little bit in her testimony, and she didn't come right out and say he beat her, but there was some abuse going on through the years.
Yeah, she definitely cast him as he's the villain, big
Oh
time.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Well,
he was
we heard the
yelling at me,
wiretaps.
and you know, even when they were leaving the house that night, he was yelling at me to make sure I didn't mess this up. And it was like it almost seemed like she was thinking like, this makes me in less. I'm not in as big of trouble since Billy yelled at me to make sure I texted the phones properly. And I'm like, no, you're still in really big trouble. Like, it
Right.
doesn't
yeah.
matter if Billy was like yelling at you or not.
Well, you know, some of her testimony was just so ridiculous, and you know, she's minimizing her role in it, and she doesn't. You're never going to make me believe, and maybe it is true, but you're never going to make me believe that she didn't get any details when they got home, and still didn't have any details
Yeah.
till the day she was sitting in that testimony chair, except for what her lawyers had shown her. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, man.
Well, apparently George didn't know about it until the morning after either. So here we are.
Yeah, yeah. I
I'm a
mean,
teacher just like you. I teach sixth grade science. And if you're anything like me, you've wasted your plan time to find a video for one of your lessons for
Sorry, I tried to log on to see what this looked like on your stream, and some commercial popped up.
Sorry, yeah, I hit the little. I felt like I was
Lady
at
was like,
school.
"Hey, I have this."
Somebody made a comment about Billy's face, but I've actually seen he must have something going on with his skin because he had that. A lot of people at the funeral picture, he had that spot, but I've seen him much later in court. He must have some kind of skin rot or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that thing is.
Yeah, no. Nor do I want to, because the teeth grinding was enough. I thought it was a pig snorting. I was like, why are they playing audio of a pig snorting in court? And it comes to find out it's Billy grinding his. How does he have teeth? He should have little nubbies.
yeah.
Oh
I mean,
my
that
gosh.
was
You guys
wild.
must have way better speakers than I do, because I had tried my heart. I listened to the teeth grinding one, but there were so many of those I just could not hear.
Oh my gosh, no.
All
I
I
had
want
my
is
AirPods
transcripts.
jammed in my ear, was not expecting to hear this. And I'm like, they got a pig in their house. And then like I put two and two together and I'm like, wait. Oh, that's the teeth grinding that every person that knew Billy testified about. Chris Newcomb made no bones about it. Like, wait. Oh, that's. Oh, he's like, you can hear that from across the room. It's an embarrassment to pigs. Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, pigs.
Yeah. So what else? Let's see here. I got a bunch of these. Yeah, we just don't know who moved the bodies, really. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What do you guys think? I think the conspiracy's been proven.
You know, I think the complicity instruction is not George's friend, especially the after the fact stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Do I keep hearing a pig snort, or is it?
Oh, my dog just kind of made a cough noise.
Okay,
That's the way you heard her over there.
Okay. It must still be stuck in this ear because I have my hands like this with my AirPods. And then when that came on, I was like, what is going on? Oh, Billy.
I think, you know, they're going to hook him. I don't mean, there's too much evidence just from his mom and his brother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when your mom looks at the prosecutor and says, I'm paraphrasing, but she says, we were all aware of what was going to happen that night. And Jake says, we were all aware of what was going to happen that night. You know, you can't come back from that.
Yeah, no.
You're not going to come back from that. And if the bloody shoe print works, amen. Good job. Great job. But yeah, they're going to hook him. It's just a matter of
Well, the family dynamics of it, as intertwined as they were, the simple fact that she got up on the stand and told the whole world, well, she told you guys in the courtroom, y'all relate it to us, that her son was involved in the conspiracy. I mean, that's a big deal. Knowing the dynamics of this family and how she controlled everything and how, even in some really super messed up way, the boys and the grandkids were her entire universe. So, but this is what happens. Now, somebody asked, what's the purpose of taking the jury to view the houses, but they never went inside? I thought that was a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not take them inside?
Wow.
Yeah, I still don't get why they needed to see the exteriors of the
Yeah.
trailers in the big barn thing that they built for them. I don't know, maybe just to show like that they
It
knew
maybe the eeriness of it, of knowing what happened in those houses, I guess. I don't know, but
I completely lost my mind when Angenette told me that.
I remember you texted me.
I completely lost my mind. I
Lost my
mean,
mind, y'all.
there's just why waste the time and the money to go, okay, well, there's 6 bullet holes there in the front of Chris's trailer. Well, let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
all right, we're gone. At some point, I guess those trailers will be turned back over to the family.
excuse me. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what would you even do with them, I mean,
Well, Kenneth's daughter, when she was I don't know if she wasn't on the stand. I think she had given an interview at some point. She said, that's all my dad had was in that trailer. We want his stuff, and so, but they're as they were the day the murders happened. So it's for them. I mean, can you imagine I can't even imagine the Roden and the Gilly family, what they deal with every single day of their life. I mean, just one member is just tragic. 8 members is unfathomable. I mean, poor Geneva.
right.
It's like, I look at her and I mean, she's lost so much. I mean, just, I just had to throw that in.
and one thing about them getting stuff back is obviously now they're not going to get the drugs that was in the big safe that they had to call a locksmith to unlock, but there was a pretty good sum amount of money in that safe, wasn't there?
It was
30,000, I think.
Yeah. There were
So,
some
I
bones in
mean,
there for sure, a lot of them. And some of that was George's. He was actually upset that the police confiscated that money, I believe, is what I'd heard. He was mad they took some of that money. Because remember, Chris Sr., he owed Chris Sr. money. And
Yeah.
Chris Sr. was holding that money for him. I think he insinuated to somebody, said, who was it that testified to that? Was it maybe Chris Newcomb?
I thought that Jeff Tackett said that Billy claimed
that was it.
It was Billy claiming that some of the money was his in the safe or something. I don't know if that's true though.
But I do remember him saying that.
Yeah, Jeff Tackett opted out. So
right, yeah. When I say I heard, it's tweeting. When I see everybody's updates or get Eric's notes.
Jeff Tackett, it's not up for me to judge anybody who opts in or out, but Jeff Tackett was phenomenal. He was a phenomenal witness. I mean, if when Parker chirped, Tackett chirped right back. I mean, he was a solid witness for the prosecution, and he's on the recall list for the defense.
Wow.
And so is the Staley girl.
Yeah.
Well, there were a few prosecution witnesses. I thought to myself, why are they there? I mean, because Samantha, you think about her, you could tell she really, even sitting on that stand, was struggling with the fact that this was George Wagner that she was testifying against. I mean, she had nothing bad to say about him. And I'm sitting here thinking, did they put her out of order or something? Because this is a defense witness,
Yeah, and you got Chris Newcomb talking about how he still loves him, and I mean, it's crazy, man.
There were just a couple of state witnesses. I thought, well, the jury, if anything, it kind of humanized him in a way to the jury, especially with hers, where when she asked him about the murders or made a comment, when was it? When they were fishing. They all went fishing after the murders, and he just had this very swift response of, I don't want to talk about it. And she said he was different. He was distant. He wasn't his bubbly self. So I just thought that humanized him in a huge way to me. People are asking about the kids. I know that Tabby, who, by the way, I think when all this is wrapped up, she needs to write a book about her times with the Wagner family. But Tabby has Vine. We know that for a fact. The girls, we don't know anything officially of where they are now.
I don't.
I just know that I've been told they're safe and they're happy. So
yeah,
you know, I think they're, you know, I mean, at least for Sophia, yikes, you know, I mean, this family was so obsessed with her. I just would hate to think that anybody would say anything that would, you know what I mean? God only knows what can go on. I mean,
yeah, that's why even if I knew, I don't think I wouldn't say it, you know, out loud. But yeah. And some people were wondering, like, why didn't the Rodens get them or the Manleys? And we just don't know. I mean, it could just be a lot of reasons, you know, that go into that. And we don't know that they, you know, we don't know where they are. But like you say, they're safe and they're happy. And that's the best part. And even better, they're not raised by these 4 people. Vine is with his mother and probably having more of a normal childhood than he ever would have had with the Wagners. So that's, you know, and that's really the best you can hope for. Scary to think, would they have been teaching them to pick locks at 9?
Yeah, those kids, I really hope, I just hope they've had therapy and
yeah, the transcripts from the trial, they're supposed to release the wiretap transcripts soon, right?
Yeah, we were supposed to get them today. I'm not I'm not holding my breath. I don't see why there wasn't any reason we didn't get them last week so we could like actually see what was being said. Like, it was just I could hear some of them were very good wiretaps. Some of the wordings were great.
Yeah.
But the others were just like, I was like, is this Charlie Brown's mom? Like, you know, like, it was horrible. Yeah. It would have been nice to just know, especially the truck recordings. Like, I maybe could make out like a few words here and there.
Yeah, I made out a lot, but then again, I was like doubting myself by 10 p.m. that night after doing that since 9 a.m. So, you know, but there was a lot of religious talk in one where, you know, they're both very judgmental and holier than thou and that kind of thing. And Jake's like spurting testimony and that kind of thing. And he's questioning George about praying for the right reasons. Are you praying for selfish reasons and all that stuff? But I'm interested because I was going to spend my weekend trying to get those 2 wiretaps in the truck that I couldn't get. And I think there's a strong possibility I would have legit hearing loss right now. So I'm glad the transcripts are coming. When I saw that, I was like, yes, don't have to listen to that no more.
Yeah, some of those were just terrible. It was bad.
The ones from Montana were pointless almost.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you half of anything.
That's speaking of Montana. Let me ask you this: why did we not get to see any of the interviews done while at the border of George or Jake? We got to hear Angela.
Yeah, that would have been good to see that.
We didn't get to hear or see George and Jake.
Yep.
I don't. Why is that?
Look, I mean, honestly, until Jake and Angela took the stand, I thought to myself, they have shown me nothing. Okay, I know the story and I know the dynamics, but in that courtroom, if they hadn't got Jake and Angela's testimony, I don't know what I'm telling you guys. You got a shoe expert saying can't say it's not, you know, that he wore those shoes, and you've So thank goodness they pled, because I don't know that they would have got George otherwise.
Yeah, I mean the shoes. I know the shoes. Like the shoes, to me are a cool thing because they had, the identifying the shoe print led them to get the subpoena for the records, which led to Angela being seen on camera purchasing the, leaving the store, and so I think it's a neat thing. But I just, you know, I don't have anybody but Jake and Angela talking about shoes in relation to George.
But
And
I'm
oh,
sorry.
and typically I think too, in cases where a co-defendant testifies or a co-conspirator, there will be a jury instruction about that,
Right.
about evaluating that testimony. And I mean, I think the defense will request this, that testimony should be viewed through a certain lens, or that, there's an instruction for it. So, I mean, because they do have incentive to involve all four, Jake and Angela have incentive to include Billy and George in this.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, so I don't think, and I thought it was interesting that Angie Canepa, even in the it was redirect, I believe, of Jake. She asked Jake, and she was trying to get at the point that he didn't just tell them what they wanted to hear. She said,
Mhm.
"Didn't we tell you that we thought you and your brother were the shooters?" And so that was the state's theory, was that George and Jake did this. And he resisted that suggestion and said, no, like, George didn't shoot anybody. And then Angela, apparently the state thought Angela was more involved than she was. She asked Jake about that too. So it's like she put that out there saying,
Right.
like, they were wrong. I mean, they were right, but they were wrong, I guess, certain aspects of their theory. So I don't know. I just thought that was like,
But and it's been the whole trial. They just absolutely refused to show. I mean, even with Angela, all we got was still pics. We don't know if that was shoes in that buggy because we didn't see her back in the shoe.
it's
in
true.
the
We
shoe
didn't see
department.
her. We didn't see her in the shoe
Why
aisle.
It's a
not
good thing
show
she
that?
just admitted to it, though. She was like, "Yeah,
She
that was
did
me.
do
I
it.
got the shoes."
She saved that receipt. She seems to be a bit of a pack rat when it comes to
Right. Yeah.
paperwork.
No kidding.
Yeah, when hoarding goes bad.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my,
Or,
I
put
mean,
it in a tub called important papers.
oh
yeah, seriously, I mean,
These people.
my
why
God.
didn't they even show the Walmart video?
Yeah, I don't know why we couldn't see the video, or, her at the cash register or whatever. I don't know. It's like, you've got good stuff, put it out there,
Yes.
like, I don't need just a screen grab. Or yeah, I think we got 3 screen grabs, that
Right.
the SUV with the table on the top or whatever.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, we'll spend a whole days of testimony going over the Flying W farms and everything that wasn't used in the crimes, and spend a whole day doing it.
Yeah.
I
I
was
don't.
waiting on the shoe to drop. I got like 3 lines written, right? I'm like, something's gonna happen. We're gonna find some big, nope. I was like, what am I gonna do for episode tonight? Because literally it's like, what am I gonna do? Spend 30 minutes saying that wasn't using the crime, that wasn't using the crime. Nope, nope, nope. I mean, it was like, that was one of those days where I scratched my head. And I know maybe they're trying to say we did a very thorough investigation, but man, it was 8 hours of that wasn't used. No, no link, no link. I was like, we could have done this in 5 minutes. Had him up
Yes.
there and say, was anything found at Flying W used in the murders? Nope. Okay, next witness.
Yeah. I mean, and the new barn at 260, they beat that to death and beat that to death and beat that to death, and never did tell us why. But then we found out when Jake got on the stand that he had buried the guns under. Again, they put the exhibit up in that corner, and he blocked the public, and we couldn't see which post that he put it under. But we did find out eventually when he got up there that that's why I think Angela was worried about the barn.
Yeah, which barn? Which barn? Remember, she kept asking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, they kept talking about that and then would go away from it and then talk about it and go away from it. I'm just like,
Mhm.
wow.
Yeah, it was interesting to me. I think definitely Angela and George on those wiretaps, you saw the progression of panic with those 2. Really. George just came out as, "I'm gonna bring all hell with me." But, like, I mean, but really, with Jake, he seemed very indifferent about it. He didn't seem worried to me on the wiretaps. There was one maybe where he seemed a little nervous, but man, those 2 unraveled a bit. "I can't handle you and your caffeine, George."
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, just laying here watching it on TV or when I'm in the actual room is the 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 pressure and the paranoia that they were living in, and they were seeing ghosts, man.
Yeah.
They were seeing ghosts. I mean, Angela said she's seen somebody at Denny's wearing the same kind of shoes that she bought for the boys to wear that night.
I mean,
Oh
they're
my
Walmart shoes. They sell them at, like, every 5 miles there's a Walmart with those little, Velcro shoes. But that's just the paranoia, and then the sniper on the hill, she's just but that's what happens. These people never I don't think in the back of their minds, at least Angela George had a moment where they were just like, "Okay, I can relax."
Right.
I think in the back of their mind, it just got maybe in Alaska. I don't know, but
Well,
when they came back, it was, they turned the heat up and they knew it. And then we have these lovely wiretaps that were a result of that. But so another question that I have, has there been any testimony that literally just sealed the deal for you as far as George, or you just go back to that? Well, they put him in the conspiracy. I don't think there's been any big revelation, to be honest, for me.
I mean, I have not had some big aha moment, like,
Right.
where I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, there it is." Like,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
yeah, I don't feel that way. I mean, I think it's all, like, family dynamic. And George, Angela, and Jake are all this. They seem to be like the unit that operates together more than Billy's off at the Flying W or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But I I just haven't felt like it's been like this big aha thing. I mean, yes,
Mm-mm.
the SKS was cut up and put in the concrete buckets. But I don't know. I just feel like it's all kind of like pieces that come together rather than
One big moment. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
like I haven't been I mean, even when Jake got up there on the stand and I feel like it was almost anticlimactic when he said and I'd have to look at my notes, but when he said that my brother, like he would answer these questions about how they all planned it or whatever. And, you know, it just
Yeah.
seemed like even Jake was like talking, and Scheiderer said that, oh, well, Jake minimized George's involvement, but I don't know, he still implicates him in all of
Right.
this.
Yeah. 100%. That's what a lot of people say. Do you think they'll keep death on the table? And I think no, because they needed for Jake and Angela to put him in the conspiracy. And that's what they did. So if anybody, on the jury doesn't agree with that, then there's other reasons I think they don't agree. But they did their job. Maybe they did minimize. I mean, maybe Jake seeing George for the first time in 4 years did something to him. Because there were discrepancies in Angela's openings versus what Jake testified to.
oh,
And they weren't huge, but they were there.
absolutely.
So
And
I
Jake,
just thought maybe it was more of an emotional thing than just,
and Jake did testify that now, take it with a grain of salt, but he's supposed to be testifying truthfully that Angela and George didn't want to do this.
mhm.
So, you know, that kind of that helps George, in a way. Um, so
Yeah. Another thing too that we learned during the trial, which was something that I just rewatched that Piketon Massacre documentary that Oxygen put out. Just rewatched it the other day. And they talked about little Chris and how on the documentary, and I'd heard this for a while too, that they couldn't find little Chris. And they said he was down, curled in the floor like he was hiding. You saw the crime scene photo, Eric, and he was in his bed.
He was naked in his bed.
So I'm just curious, like, did they not find him in his bed for a while?
They
Did I miss something?
I don't remember exactly what happened, but I just know when I was out there that day when this happened, when we first went out, there was talk about how they couldn't find, I remember being in the car driving out there, and there was talk that they couldn't find the teenage boy.
Yeah.
And that they wondered if he was the person who shot everybody and took off running. And then Leonard Manley had kind of said to us, they couldn't find little Chris or whatever.
Didn't it come out that they didn't clear that room though? Wasn't that it? And then, because I remember thinking, well, what if the shooter's in there? I'll have to go back, but I think maybe they said they didn't clear that room right away.
Yeah, because I was listening to another podcast on the way to the courtroom a couple weeks ago, and they say on that podcast that it took them 6 hours to find Chris Jr.
Yeah.
See, I don't remember it taking that long, because we were told when we went out there, we were told 7 people were dead. And that was at, 9 whatever in the morning.
Yeah.
We knew 7 people were dead by that time. It was after 9 a.m. But 6 hours, that's more like the timeline of when they found Kenneth.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true. Chris Sr. had taken his truck, remember, because he was grounded. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe the family could have relayed that or what. But I do remember hearing for a long time, it took him a while to find him. And then Eric's like, he was in his bed.
Yeah, there were always these rumors that he was in between the bed, like he had tried to escape.
Yeah.
Or something in between the bed and the wall, but that wasn't true.
Right.
I don't know if it's because of the way the door opened in. Like if you look at the diagram of the house, didn't the front door go open this way, and then his bedroom is kind of over to the side?
That's
of
true.
the
Yeah. So it might have closed. Yeah. But I'll have to go back and see. It was one of the earlier crime scene investigators. I think he said they just literally didn't clear that room.
I don't remember who it was, but somebody had to draw him a map of Dana's house.
I think it was Bobby Joe.
Because they couldn't find him.
Yeah.
So they had, no, it wasn't Bobby Joe, because
No?
I wasn't there for her testimony. I have it in my notes somewhere.
Okay.
And she wasn't really involved in that scene.
That's right. She was Chris and Gary and Frankie.
Yeah, somebody. It was one of the women.
April Manley, maybe.
Who?
April Manley.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think that's who it was.
Yeah. Goodness. Yeah. She had to draw law enforcement a map.
That's right.
So I don't know, what happened or why it was so hard for him to find him, but he was laying on his bed nude.
Yeah, bless his heart. Good grief.
I mean,
yeah. So where do you think the defense is? Have you guys heard anything about witnesses, who they're calling, or how many?
I mean, we heard the other day more than 2 left, but we don't know what that means. They don't like, they're not like, they don't seem to be the most forthcoming.
Right.
yeah, they had Barb Moore on last week, which was one of Jake's attorneys at one time, and I was sick that day and I didn't get to make the trial that day, so I still don't know what she testified to.
Yeah.
It was very short though, because I remember it coming back on live real quick. So whatever it was, it couldn't have been very much. I do have a witness list, but like I told people on Twitter, it doesn't do me any good to put a witness list out there because they don't go by it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
No kidding.
there's still witnesses on the prosecution, Frederica, Al Lewis was the lead investigator who never, those were all subpoenaed, but none of them were called for the prosecution. So I quit full on with the subpoenas because can't trust them.
I know you would send me a subpoena and I'd be like, whoa, this is going to be interesting. And then crickets, nothing.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe what, in a week or two, we might be on verdict watch, maybe a little less.
Could be less. I mean, I've been trying to think who would the state call on rebuttal?
Yeah.
I mean, what are they going to rebut? Because, at least with the pastors, the Cinereskis, I mean, they just seem like two nice men who showed up to, say whatever they were asked about and to answer questions.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like anything that they, Angie Knepp cross-examined them. I mean, I just don't understand what they would even do for rebuttal based on what we've seen thus far.
That was my thought too. So you never know. We might be on verdict watch. Y'all, I'm going to need Valium on verdict watch. Just telling you. I'll pace my floors until we hear verdict. I get so nervous with verdict, y'all. I can't even.
I'm not
every
really,
time.
I'm like I said, I'm not really worried. I was, but you cleared it up a little bit ago until we got to Jake and Angela. Yeah, I was worried.
Yeah.
I was worried because
I know you were worried.
But like I said, they'll hook him. Defense witnesses. I mean, since somebody asked, I can tell you for sure that Jeff Tackett is being recalled. The Staley gal is being recalled. And there's 4 or 5 other ones that are on the list, but I don't remember the names right off the top of my head. Oh, yeah, I do. Vance Walls, Skid Montgomery.
Oh, boy.
Jeff Tackett. Did I say him already?
Yeah, so we might be getting into a couple weeks.
And then, but it doesn't mean they'll call these people.
Right.
Seth Hageman, he was with BCI. He interviewed George at the border. They brought him up. They brought Seth Hageman up in opening. The defense did, basically saying that he told George at the border, you guys are all going down for conspiracy. Oh. So I think they were trying to say, oh, look, they had this, they just assumed the whole family was in on it when they weren't. Mm-hmm. I think that's where the defense was going with that. But I don't know if they'll call Seth Hageman or not.
Is he the guy that asked George, do you want to be a defendant or do you want to be a witness or something to that effect?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
He basically told him they're all going down for conspiracy, or he was going down for conspiracy or something, which would be great if we heard that interview.
Yeah, it'd be really nice. But hey, we'll just we'll wonder.
I would love to hear George under pressure in the interrogation.
Yeah, me too.
How he responded to that.
That's the only reason I bring that up to everybody is, I'm a dude. I'm a visual man. I need to see things. I want to see him. I want to see him lying and sweating it. And
I always want to see it too. Like it drives me nuts. I'm like, it's even back then, 2017. Like, where's the video? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember this trial. It was this guy in Wisconsin who killed his mom and dad and chopped up their body. It was horrific. Like
Chandler Halderson.
Yes.
Yeah, I covered that one. That was crazy.
That was some of the best interrogation room video I've ever seen, because they had like a shot out from they had like 2 cameras. I mean, that is just the way to do it, because you could see his face, the way he was reacting to and not reacting to things. I just feel like video is always the way to go. I think it's better. I mean, whether you're innocent or you're guilty, it's just better all the way around. And
for your presentation, no matter which side you're on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we're just geared toward now. 2022, everything's recorded and everything's everything's out there. I mean,
And
But they-
everything's pretty much live streamed.
yeah,
Judge Deering.
yeah.
Man, I mean, like Big E, because I couldn't talk to him when Jake or Angela was testifying, obviously, because nobody had their phones in there. So I'm literally just like looking at my clock, taking a little walk around the front yard. I'm like, what's going on in there? Oh, I hope they get it together before Billy's trial. But you think about it though, okay? Like, so they would have never recovered those weapons if Jake hadn't have confessed either.
Never.
Right.
If
No.
they had have picked up their shell casings out of the gravel driveway and not been such pigs around their house, they might have gotten away with this.
They could have gotten away with it a lot easier than they were getting caught doing it. Because of just what you just said. You pick up that one round,
Mm-hmm.
and where are we now?
Yep. He said that's when the bell went off for him, when he was kicking the gravel and looked down and saw that 22 shell casing, or there was more than one.
Yeah.
And that's what they got that search warrant on. And that was it.
Yeah.
Boom. So if they hadn't have had that shell casing there, it's funny to think, or not funny, but it's weird to think, like, where would we be? We might not be here. You've got a custody battle, but
Yeah.
other than that, you don't have much.
Or how about like using a gun that doesn't have like a unique firing pin that nobody's ever seen before?
But criminals at the end of the day are dumb. And so let's get some rare gun that like the BCI guy had to call, the manufacturer to get the goods on. And this guy knows everything about guns. I've learned a lot from Epic Beard Dude, by the way.
Yeah.
That white's slick. I met him. He's slick.
Yeah, he's a good witness. So interesting stuff, y'all. Who's the man chatting? That's Big E, the man behind the curtain. He is our eyes and ears in the courtroom when people opt out. He's the one that gives us the notes so that we can do what we do. If not, we probably would not be covering this trial very much, because the biggest testimony was Jake. And Eric, I don't know how your hand is not still like cramped up like that, but I'm going to tell you, he said, here's the morning notes. It's like 14 pages. But by the end, it got like, okay, I'm tired. Like the first, it's like the first day of school. Like your first 3 pages were great, man. The letters were pretty. And then by the end, it was like dragging. Poor Eric. He's done us a solid, y'all. He has done us a solid. And Angenette, you've been there since day one.
Yeah.
So I'm sure for you watching this just unfold over the past 6 years has just been crazy.
One of the things that I, and I haven't really talked about this very much. I had like Angela Wagner, I exchanged Facebook messages with her back when their property was being searched, and I still have them.
Oh, wow.
Like May 12th of 2017, I remember I was in the news truck, like in between live shots, and I was, hi, Mrs. Wagner, this is Angenette Levy with, Local 12 or whatever. I'm out here, and I don't know if you know, but some BCI agents are going through your stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
She's like, I'd have to look. I've got the screen grabs in my Dropbox somewhere. They're
my gosh.
She's like, yes, I'm well aware of the slander of my family that's taking place and all this stuff. And we were supposed to get together for an interview when she got back, because they were in Alaska doing this scouting trip or whatever. And I had tried to reach Jake too, and his phone, I think he had gotten a new phone. But back then, I was trying to reach him on whatever phone he had, and he wasn't responding. But I just think back to that. And I think back on all of this, and I still, it's horrible enough to think about killing one person, but to think about what went on over an imagined fear of, I just can't for the life of me, and when Angela said, well, even if we, she didn't think they'd get away with it because they'd have to live with it. Like, I just don't, like, even going to court, it's just so crazy.
Yeah.
None of it makes any, like, it's so nonsensical to me, like that they actually like sat there and like that Jake had the time to like fashion silencers out of flashlights or, oil filters, whatever they ended up using. And yet you're going through all these machinations and all these things to do this, and the fact that you thought that this was going to be the way to solve a problem is so beyond the pale to me. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, it's super unbelievable. Somebody
Yeah,
asked, did you ever figure out who Detective Scheider is? Okay, so I got an inbox from a listener who apparently is in the know, and I do have some people's topics names. So I'm just going to put it out there. Thank you guys for telling everybody to hit that like. I will set up moderators next chat. I tried to do it, couldn't figure it out. Okay, apparently Scheider was Proud Pike.
Oh, was he?
Jake was Mr. Smiley. Angela was Hillbilly, or I don't know if this is a typo, but it kind of sounds very Angela, Hellbilly Deluxe. So Scheider, Proud Pike, Jake, Mr. Smiley, Angela, Hellbilly Deluxe.
That's interesting. A lot of people thought that Jake was Mr. Smiley. So you have it confirmed that those are indeed that Scheider was Proud Pike?
That is
Scheider?
that's what the listener said, and she was very, very certain. And so I don't know who they are personally, but I think they are in the know. So
Okay.
yeah, Proud Pike.
I
So
remember
now I'm
Proud
gonna.
Pike. I used to read topics.
Did you really? You can go on the way back machine.
I kind of enjoyed it, actually.
It was so dirty. I found the old one on the way back machine of the whole who do you think did it, like from day one, and there's 6,000 pages and over 100,000 posts. I'm starting to weed through them, so I haven't come across any Proud Pike because it's on the way back machine. It's archived web pages, so you can't actually search for a username. So now I'm going through 6,000 pages finding Mr. Smiley and hell Billy or whatever.
Wait, so let's just get this straight again. You're saying you have it on good authority that Proud Pike was Scheider.
Yep.
Mr. Smiley was Jake, because a lot of people thought Mr. Smiley was Jake.
Yep.
And then Angela was Hellbilly something.
Hellbilly Deluxe.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm sure they have more than one sock account, but that's the names that were provided to me. And the person who gave me these names gave me their name, but I won't put that out. But yeah, so this person knows pretty much for sure, or seems very certain. Yeah, that was it. So Mr. Smiley apparently was Jake.
So interesting. I would have liked to have known a little more about that on the why didn't they just tell us that in the testimony?
We want to know.
I mean, Scheider said he couldn't remember. He'd have to look back at his notes about it sounded like he had more than one name, I thought.
Yeah, and I'm sure they all did.
Proud Pike seemed to be pretty active on there.
I think it was Scheider just, kind of pushing buttons and stirring the hornet's nest. But Mr. Smiley apparently, according to this person, put out some really out there theories of what could have happened. And so for them, when they found out Mr. Smiley was apparently Jake, it made so much sense.
Yeah, a lot of people thought, I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought Mr. Smiley was Jake.
Yeah. So that's what I've been told. Nothing about George or Billy. Of course, I don't think Billy would have known how to use that, but yeah, so those are the names I heard. I just pulled it up to make sure. I just pulled my message up. That was it. Yep.
Gosh, that's really interesting. Now I want to go back and look at some of the Proud Pike messages. I think I have some in my Dropbox. I used to, this is ridiculous.
Your Dropbox is like your Mary Poppins bag.
It kind of is. It's ridiculous. But I think I used to save a lot of the screen. Like if I found something interesting on topics that I thought, oh, that seems kind of interesting, I would screen grab it.
Yeah.
Kind of like Angela Wagner.
Yeah.
Angela Wagner's always screen grabbing stuff on her iPad. She's like, but it's just, I think I have a lot of old topic stuff in my Dropbox somewhere.
Yeah. And I'm weeding through it now too on the way back machine. So if I see any of these names, I'll screenshot them and stick them in my Dropbox and share them with you.
Yeah. I want to see that.
Yeah, I do too. That's just, 6,000 pages, 100 and something thousand responses. I'll be doing this till like Jesus comes back.
So is it like they're talking to each other, or I'm absolutely lost on what you're talking about.
Oh, Topics was this website. It was like a gossip, like a community gossip forum. and it was like a way people in Pike County, I don't know how many people, but people were pretty active on it. And the murders, the homicides were a big topic of conversation. And there were people that would put posts on there to, that you would just talk about it. And people had these different usernames. And there was a prolific user on there, Proud Pike, who Gigi is saying was Scheiderer. I would think Julia Eveslage would have had a name on there too, personally. But
heck yeah, put Julia up in there. She knows what's up. I'm trying to pull this up. If I can share my screen.
Was this testified to at the trial?
Angela used or monitored topics. We've heard topics mentioned. And Jake even mentioned that Jake mentioned he had a Facebook profile that he would like Facebook stalk Hannah Mae with, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't
remember
say
that.
anything about a name on topics, but Mr. Smiley was on topics. That was a username on topics, and people always speculated that Mr. Smiley was Jake.
Yeah, so I have the archive pulled up here, and it's nothing specific. I mean, it's going to take. Let me see if I can do this real quick.
But the real sad thing, Eric, is that topics got shut down.
Yeah.
A while back, years ago. It's actually quite sad. Was it topics.net, Gigi? Or is it topics.com? I don't think.
Topics.com. And then
it was topics.com.
Yep. Okay. And then the forum name, it was Your Theory on the Piketon Murders of 8 in the Piketon forum on topics. That's where all that was contained to. So these are May 2nd, 2016, where they have their first archive. So not long after the murders. And then some pages aren't archived. So that's what takes a long time, is you may be on a thread for 4 or 5 pages, and then it cuts off, and then you got to keep entering in to find out what page was archived. But and then it's 100,000 pages. So yeah, it's interesting because in the early days, from what I saw, it was the cartel theory, which I never really kind of bought into. I mean, they had a few barns. They don't have hundreds and hundreds of acres. I never bought into that.
It always drove me nuts when I would see people talk about that, even on newscasts and stuff. It drove me crazy because I had talked to people like feds at the time who looked into that and told me it was bogus. And it just drove me nuts. Like, they were like, no, the cartel did not do this. Like, It drove me crazy that people would actually say that on the news.
Yeah, right. Big E, somebody's got a question for you. What do you think about the tattoos, especially George's 8-ball with the skull and dice? Can I just say, we have been live for an hour and 37 minutes, and not once have we said Boondock Saints till I just said it.
I thought about bringing it up, but I don't want to like stir up
well, there you go. I just did it for you. What do you think about the tattoo, George? I just called you George. Oh boy. Ooh,
I'm bringing all hell with me.
Yeah, you could bring hell if I call you George. What do you think about that 8-ball?
Probably the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
Why would you do that after that? Play the tough guy role when we're all seeing now that you were the biggest wimp of the bunch who froze up. You did nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not that tough guy that you portrayed yourself to be. Big guy. Mm-hmm. Have fun in jail with Big Ed.
But do you believe the tattoo artist who said he's like, I picked that? He didn't the 8. Do you think it's significant at all, the 8 and all of that?
Well, yeah,
I kind of do.
I don't know why. I mean, it's not like there's a pool hall around there where, George was hanging out and shooting pool every night. True,
right? I mean, we've not heard that he plays pool. So you do think it was significant, or it's because of the homicides?
I think that it was absolutely meant toward the homicides. Now, that's just That's just my opinion. But
then I know a tattoo artist who said it is a very common thing they use to cover up because it's so dark black. And so it's a good thing to cover up something. But I mean, coincidence, you know, bad taste, all that stuff, whatever the reason.
What did he I'm refresh my mind. What was it that he had covered up? I forget.
I have a picture of the old tattoo. I'm not sure what I thought maybe it was a bird or something.
It's no big deal. Don't even worry about it. But there's plenty of other things that you can use to cover it up.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, an 8-ball after you wipe out 8 family members. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just too, you know, coinkydink for me.
I agree. Yeah, I don't have that tattoo picture handy right now, but yeah. But that's what the tattoo guy said was it's, you know, commonly used in cover-ups, and he does like 3 or 4 a week. But I'm like, you don't do 3 or 4 a week on somebody who was in a conspiracy to murder 8 people. So,
Right.
you know, crazy, crazy. So yeah, well, I think this has been a super fun live, y'all.
Yeah, me too. I was just found one of my Angela Wagner messages.
Oh, did you really?
Nice.
Yeah, I'm in my Dropbox. I wrote it was I remember when this happened, June 19th, 2017. That was the day that that DeWine put out the news release about, hey, if you've had any dealings with the Wagners, give us a call. And here's one of my Facebook screen grabs, and I said, Mrs. Wagner, do you have a comment on this? It was 9:48 p.m. because I remember my boss called me and I was down at the courthouse covering a resentencing. Or no, I was at Ray Tenzing, this cop, UC cop that got, it was this whole thing. He killed somebody. He killed a man, was charged with murder. I think I was at one of his trials because he was tried twice and they were both mistrials. But I sent it at 9:48 p.m. on June 19th, 2017. And she responded at 11:40. And I sent our story about the news release because my boss had called me and he's like reading the news release to me, like, because I had told him all about the Wagners. You know, this was a month after the search warrant. And she just said, my attorney has informed me not to talk to anyone. So she didn't want to have she didn't have anything to say about the news release, but her testimony, she was really upset about it.
Oh yeah. That was when I think it got really real. When the minute they left, they were on that property. So yeah, which barn?
Yeah.
And you know, they were mad about stuff being torn up and you know, everything you shouldn't give a crap about after you've been involved with an 8-person murder.
Yeah. You have to wonder, do they, I mean, because for Angela, as much control and fear as she had about those kids, I mean, now she doesn't know where they are. And the odds of those kids remembering a whole lot about her at this point, or, you know, as they get older, their memories will fade and she'll be somebody that maybe they kind of remember. I bet all that eats her up. And I just love that.
I mean, I kind of I wish somebody had asked her, like, I'm surprised nobody used that to get under her skin, like the defense, I mean.
Right.
I thought the same thing. Why didn't you say so? You were so worried about the kids, but now he could have said they're not with family, you know, they're with strangers. So how did you figure what you did benefit her more than where she is now? You know, yeah, I totally would have seen what kind of emotion I could have gotten out of her with that.
And Nash really did go after her about that. You know, he was basically, you know, he said, you know, all these things that you thought was happening to Suds, yet you didn't take her to the doctor to be seen by a professional.
Right.
And, you know, he was telling her there's all these other routes that, you know, she could have taken and handled it and it not been, you know, it didn't have to be a whole family being wiped out. Well, then she didn't trust CPS and she didn't trust the justice system before that. So you're in your head, you're sitting there thinking, you are so full of, you are so full of.
Yeah, but then you think she took him to the ER after the Montana border stop
Oh,
because she thought they
yeah.
drugged the
Right.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Everybody's out to drug Angela.
Yeah. I mean, she's really is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, the fact she didn't take Sophia, just in my theory is that was, planted by her.
of course it was.
I think she put a lot of, and Jake even says something, not about that specifically, but, about this whole mommy issue. He said, well, if she's hearing it from you.
Yeah.
He
He
did throw that out to her.
He absolutely tells her. He said she's hearing it because you're sitting here screaming it to me on the phone. So that's where she's hearing it from. And then Angela says, no, she's not here, Jake. She's not here. She's not hearing it. She's not here beside me right now, or something like that. But she planted all of that stuff.
Every bit of it. And I think that she planted that about not liking Beth as well. Because, apparently her and Beth had a little bond. And then Angela feels, in my mind, I think Angela feels threatened. And what do you start doing? She's going to take your daddy away. Your daddy loves her more than, he loves you. I really do think in the end, if Sophia was having problems with Beth, that's where it came from.
Yeah, because you've got George screaming on one of the very first wiretaps that we get to hear. We get to hear George browbeating it into Bullvine's brain that all these people want to do bad things to him, and take him away and give him to somebody else, and they want to kill me and Uncle Jake. And did you ever hear Jake ever say that on any of them?
No.
That stuff is all Angela and George.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second that Jake was buying any of that.
And the sad thing is, you hear Bullvine saying, no, no, no. I mean, like, he doesn't want to hear it. And then he's like, they're going to give you to bad people. And it's just, and the child is distressed, obviously.
Yeah.
But, it's just interesting to me that they thought everybody was out to get the kids. But geez, man, that was what shocked me is I thought the opposite, that on the recordings you would hear those kids could do no wrong. They're just coddled and never yelled at. And boy, was I wrong.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you know what? The best witness against, as far as proving all that, is Beth.
Boom. You are exactly right.
That girl absolutely knocked it out of the ball. I was so proud of her.
I was too. She was very brave. And Tabitha too.
Oh yeah, and Tabby too.
Yeah, I really give those two young women props because they got up there and I'm sure it was kind of cathartic for them, but they got up there on camera and they told, their stories. And, it's a crying shame that other people, some of the people I understand not wanting to be on camera. I completely do.
Right.
But I find it so disheartening that there have been people like Jake and Angela who wouldn't go on camera or who opted out when you had these two women who described living these terrible existences with these people. And they're willing to get up there and speak.
And not only that, but revealing to both of them that they were molested when they were younger and they opted in. It's like you have Douglas Stone that found Kenneth's body. He sat up there and I thought, man, how odd is this that every person that I would be totally okay with opting out for obvious reasons opted in.
Yeah.
They wanted their story told. They wanted their loved ones, how they found them, how they lived with the Wagners to be out there. That just impressed me about all of them.
Yeah. And I feel like they wanted to do right by their families, and I give all of them a lot of, props sounds like too casual, but I just greatly, I don't know, I guess I admire it. Like,
Yeah, it's
for people to
respectful.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
So
be
I'm
that
trying to use the
vulnerable.
right wording here.
No, but I
'cause-
think it shows I respect them because not only did they relive their experiences with the Wagners, the defense did pull in, especially with Tabby, her history of being molested. And I thought maybe went a little too far with it. But, still, that was what they did for Tabitha. I mean, she rocked it up there and Beth too. And they were the two, had they opted out, I would have completely understood, but they went up there with their baggage from their childhood trauma and sat there and relived it on a live stream.
Yeah.
So that's commendable.
100% agree.
That's why I think Tabby needs to write a book about her experiences when all this is said and done, when the last trial's over. And I'd love to see her and Bullvine just like be able to do what they want to do.
Hey, Gigi, let me ask you this, and
Oh, you're going to tell me something?
What do you think about the bombshell that they stopped in between 260 and Chris's house for the last chance to back out?
Yeah, I forgot if we were talking about that earlier. That was one of those new additions by Jake. That was one of those new details he added on Cross, which, yikes. I mean, I feel like it's like Billy didn't want to do this, but it doesn't. I don't understand why he did it then.
Yeah.
Be the grown up. If this is indeed how it unfolded, I'm not trying to. Billy, I know, still has a trial. He's innocent until proven guilty. But how about you just be like, we're not doing this?
Right? Yeah. It's the dumbest thing we've ever thought of. Yeah, and good point by somebody on chat. I saw it fly by. Survivors, not victims. That is exactly right.
Right.
They survived it and got away. Yeah, no, and I agree. We'll never know the full truth of that night. I think some things were cherry picked to minimize his involvement, but I think we got the full picture pretty much. I mean, the murders went down the way there was a lot of back and forth, but I think Dana working that double threw a wrench in things for them time wise. They had some time to kind of burn between leaving Frankie's, and then they went back to Kenneth's after that, then back to Chris Senior's. And so, yeah, but there's still that timeline. Me and Eric, I can't tell you. Thank God for unlimited texting because we have been back and forth.
I just don't think I buy the whole, I don't know. I mean, because I was looking at when I was driving it the last time, I looked at the mileage and, watched the clock. And it's about like, I think Jake said it was 15 miles, and that is about right.
Right.
But I just was like thinking to myself, like, I just think 9 o'clock would have been too early for them to leave.
Yeah. That's what she and I were talking about last night was.
Oh, I pulled up the historic sunset on April 21st of 2016. It wasn't until like 9:30 that it was sunset.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, really?
I just don't think they left at 9 o'clock like Jake.
No, they would have waited till it's pitch dark before they go walking out to the truck in their boxers with no shoes on or whatever. So I think maybe they left later because it was like 9:20 that night was sunset.
Well, maybe they left more. I mean, it just seems like more like 10 o'clock would have been.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I think. But then you still have a longer time at Billy's than I think what Jake remembers. And I do believe that one witness that was for the thank you guys for all the super chats, by the way. That the one thing I do is that loss of time when you're in a traumatic situation. And even if you are an evil shooter, you still are going to lose track of time. Adrenaline's pumping, you're hyper focused. So it could be that we know when they killed Dana because of her last cell phone, it was after 3. So then you go to Kenneth's and then you are there. He said 30 seconds in and out. But I find it hard to believe they didn't look around for security cameras or anything like that. But then you got what, 15-minute drive back to Chris Senior's and then 20 minutes back to Peterson Road. So maybe they did get, but I think they had to have left later than what Jake said. And I think they stayed at Dana's a little longer than they said too.
I mean, we drove that on the jury view.
You did?
Yeah, we drove the whole route. They took us on the same route they said that Jake said they took that night. So we
Okay.
went like down and around and, you know, like, yeah, it's weird. I don't know what they would have been doing.
Oh boy, Carol wants to know what ding dong video. I missed that. Just consider yourself lucky, Carol.
Yeah.
Carolyn. I mean, I can reenact it for you, but no, I'm kidding. I won't do that. It's a scene in a movie that Jake watched before he left to do the murders, and it's got his man idol. It's a movie with his man idol Norman Reedus in it about two vigilante brothers who go out and kill people. There you go, ding dong. But listen, I'm just going to tell you guys this. Every time my teenagers come in the house, guess what they say now?
I'm sure.
Yeah. And I always say, don't say that. But then like I'm one of those parents that's like, you know, covering my face. I've never been a good disciplinarian because they make me laugh. And so like, you know, I'm like, don't say that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm one of those ding dong boondocks. Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I tried to watch that movie years ago when that first popped up in the Discovery documents or whatever. And I was just like, this is just not my style. Like, it's just not my thing. And you know, and I had heard a little bit about it or whatever, but I'm
Yeah.
just like, I'm like, seriously, like you watch this to psych yourself up. It's just like, you're just in another universe that I'm
Yeah. Yeah. He did, you know, he was a gamer and all that. So I do think La La Land, little fantasy world he was living in there. He probably was imagining himself as this character in the movie the whole time he's doing this to these poor people. Crazy, crazy. Well, guys, it's almost 11.
Yes.
So your kid's probably starving by now, by the way.
He got some food on his own, but it just drives me crazy because he refused to eat his whole dinner. So, but I do have to get off here.
Yeah, I do too. I have to get up at 5 because I need like 2 cups of coffee before I even start trying to wake those kids up. If not, y'all would be covering my story on a podcast. So,
hey, quick question, Angenette. They're starting at 8:30 in the morning to still be going through the evidence.
Yeah, I guess they're going to gripe about exhibits.
Is the public going to be allowed in while they're doing that?
I mean, they're going to argue. There will be some argument about it. So they're going to say we don't think this should come in for this reason and all of that. And it's a death penalty case, so they're probably going to be more involved than it typically would be. And I think Parker said between 90 and 110 exhibits that they had that they were objecting to. And
wow.
I'm hearing there's more than 2,000 exhibits. So,
holy moly.
Right.
Yeah, they've spent all day today going through all that. And even though I was giving them a hard time about it, but I didn't know if I wanted to go up and if I would be allowed to be able to go in since.
I mean, I don't know what you're going to see when you get in there because I'm working from home, but the camera, it has to be up on Lady Justice or whatever. Well, the judge isn't on the bench.
Right.
But I'm sure they're just thumbing through these things. They were going to stay tonight to work on it.
Yeah, he was like, y'all can just leave the court. We'll leave the courthouse open.
Yeah, Rob Junk has keys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're arguing.
Slumber party.
Didn't we say like 50 of them was for autopsy pics of some? They're arguing the autopsy pics is the big hang up for Parker. So, but I don't know. I'm thinking about going up just to see what they argue about.
The jury's supposed to be there at noon, and I just hope those poor people aren't left to sit there for a couple of hours. because then it's time to send them home. Because what are you really going to do?
I don't see how they're going to go through all that by noon.
I don't know.
Hmm.
It's a little insane to me, but what do I know? I mean,
Yeah. Well, Angenette, thank you so much for coming on.
well,
It was
thanks for
awesome
having me,
you.
guys.
Big E, the big brother. As Crusha said, the big brother I never knew I needed. So, yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, we'll have to do this again, like verdict watch or something, or after verdict.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
cool.
Everybody's
That'd
had
be
a good time. I'm gonna get some mods for next time. So if you offer to be a mod, shoot me an email, GiGi at prettyliesandalibis.net, and I'll hook you up because I need mods. I couldn't see the comments, but I think maybe there were some bad ones. So sorry about that.
Uh-oh.
I do not have an OnlyFans, guys. It's a scam. No, I'm just teasing. Okay.
All right, guys.
All
I'm
right,
out.
guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much.
All right.
All right.
Good
Bye.
chat. Bye.